Hello everybody, and welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips. And I'm going to just do a couple of short announcements, and then I want to get to the topic, which is the coronavirus that so many of you have been asking about and which I promised to look into and report back to you on. So the first thing is, remember, the Food Over Medicine coaching program starts actually tonight. There's still time to get in on that class, and this group of people will be some of the first that get involved with our public health initiatives, which will be launching later this year. And then remember, if you are not a member, you only have until the end of this month, March, to sign the Stop Talking, Start Doing pledge, get your gift certificate, which you can apply to membership. So my email address is pampopper@msn.com if you would like to sign that pledge. Last but not least, if you are interested in careers, it's time to start thinking about getting enrolled for the next semester. And so anyway, I'd love to talk to you about it. I schedule one-on-one appointments to discuss this with people who are thinking about a career in our field, or if you are already medically trained and looking to reorient yourself to doing more of the type of work that we do here, we can show you how to do it. So once again, my email address is pampopper@msn.com. So let's talk about coronavirus. I've gotten, I don't know how many hundred emails and phone calls and people asking me, please talk about it, and so I'm going to. So almost right now, almost every news outlet and print publication is featuring stories that are pretty scary about the coronavirus, and health authorities and others are referring to our current situation as an emergency and even an epidemic that we're having right now. And this is having an effect. I mean, people are canceling their trips and airlines are cutting back on their schedules, and large events are being scaled back or even canceled. For example, the annual Arnold Classic, which is held here in Columbus and is one of the biggest sports-related events in the world, has announced that they will go on with the competition, but the trade show portion of it, which has involved literally hundreds and hundreds of merchants, is canceled. And of course, those merchants that purchase booth space and were counting on this to build their businesses are probably going to hurt financially as a result of it. Now, the problem with all of this is that there seems to be a huge disconnect between what we're being told about the coronavirus and what's really happening. And I've said for the last several weeks that this, to me, seems like a manufactured crisis with specific ends in mind, which I'll get to later. But I think the place to start is to compare the real data concerning this virus with what's being said. And I'm going to start with the Centers for Disease Control. I went there to look at what they have to say. And here is a quote from the website. Coronaviruses are a large family of viruses that are common in people and many different species of animals. Rarely, animal coronaviruses can infect people and then spread between people, end of quote. Sometimes this type of spread happens, and this is the case with the actual virus is SARS-CoV-2, which causes a disease called COVID-19, which you've heard more about that term than you probably have the other. The problem, and I just refuse to call it an epidemic at this time. I'm open to changing my mind about it, by the way, but it's not an epidemic right now. But this whole thing started in Wuhan, China, and many of the sick patients were indeed exposed to seafood and animal products at large markets. Now, it's likely that initially people contracted the virus there, but eventually it spread from person to person, and people who had never had contact with these types of animal products developed it. According to the CDC, there has been progression to what they call community spread, which means that some of the people who are developing the coronavirus don't really know how they were exposed. Now, I looked at another government website, Medline Plus, which says that symptoms of coronavirus include runny nose, headache, cough, sore throat, fever, and not feeling well. Now, there is no question that for some people who are in poor health, the symptoms can be much more severe and worse, but data show that these symptoms, serious symptoms and worsening health and death are really very rare. The number of affected people worldwide is very low. CNN reported on March 4th, I'm filming this on March 5th, that there were over 92,000 cases and 3,200 deaths. Now, in terms of world population, which is someplace in the vicinity of 8 billion people right now, this means that the incidence rate is a little over 1 in 100,000, and the death rate is currently and you have to see this in writing to really appreciate it, 0.000039999 14 nines and a 6%. Now, to put this in perspective, according to National Geographic, the odds of being struck by lightning this year are 1 in 3,000, which means that you actually should be significantly more worried about standing outside during a thunderstorm than being exposed to the virus at a shopping mall. But even if you are exposed, this does not mean that you will become infected. And infected people don't always develop symptoms, even if they do. In Wuhan, China, for example, about 79,000 cases have been reported in a population of just over 11 million people. This means that the infection rate is 7 per thousand, or 0.7%, less than 1%. And remember that death rate worldwide is very, very low. So in other words, 99.93% of the people living at the epicenter of the outbreak, if we can even call it that, are not effective. Now, according to Chinese officials, 81% of the cases were mild, with symptoms similar to the common cold. According to one doctor at the University of Hong Kong, coronavirus can be, quote, virtually indistinguishable from the common cold or seasonal flu. Officials also say that due to the fact that many more people probably contracted the virus and were completely asymptomatic, the death rate is even lower than reported. And remember, the death rate is extraordinarily low. The good news, by the way, is that if you have had exposure to the coronavirus, symptomatic or asymptomatic, you have lifetime immunity. In the United States, the data are equally not alarming, but the response certainly is. I mean, people are becoming completely unhinged, and I simply can't understand this. So on March 4th, again yesterday, the CDC reported that a total of 80 people in the United States have been diagnosed with coronavirus. There are approximately 330 million people living in the United States right now, which means that the incidence rate here is 0.0000242%. This means that 99.999999758% of people in the United States are not affected. All right, so in response to one death in California, the governor declared a state of emergency, which people are unhinged. Los Angeles County declared a local health emergency after 6 new cases were reported there. Now, the population of Los Angeles County right now is 10.16 million people, which means an incidence rate of 0.0000590%. I mean, we don't even have language to put that into something understandable. A total of 11 people in the United States have died from coronavirus, and the CDC has just announced that this is so serious that doctors should start testing anybody who has symptoms like fever, cough, or difficulty breathing. Now, I want to be clear. I'm upset about anybody who dies, and I don't want you to think that I am cavalier about that. I'm really not. But 11 people out of 330 million people, I mean, more people than that died in the tornadoes that hit Tennessee a couple of days ago. And that certainly was front page news for about a nanosecond, and then we went back to talking about this. Congress just allocated $8.9 billion to address the imminent threat again on March 4th. So you may see it differently, but what I see is a ginormous disconnect between what's going on and what's being reported about what's going on. And this is inducing a panic in the population, and I have a lot of concerns about it, one of which is that one fine day, there's going to be a problem. There really will be a problem of something that we should pay attention to, and everybody's just going to yawn and go back to whatever they were doing and pay no attention. So speaking of what's going on, let's talk about what I'm just going to give you my opinion, and some of you may disagree with this too. First of all, I think that people do have coronavirus, and I think that they've probably been getting it for a very, very long time. This isn't a new virus, and it's in the same family as the common cold. I think that people in China have coronavirus, and it's just possible that China fanned the flames about this and turned it into an epidemic in order to show the United States how much it really does rely on China. Let's face it, China has taken a beating from the current United States administration in the form of trade and tariffs and crackdowns on the theft of intellectual property. So it's not entirely out of the realm of possibility that causing some pain for the United States would be in the Chinese best interest. And in fact, there is some difficulty. U.S. corporations are basically saying, like Apple, they're not going to be able to get enough phones, for example, out of China. And this is going to hurt their sales. It's going to hurt hurt their stock price, and et cetera, et cetera. So the message is clear. The United States needs China and goods produced in China, so maybe we shouldn't be so tough on China. That's a hypothesis, but I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibilities. And if you go back to what's going on in Wuhan, China, fanning this into an epidemic with the numbers that I told you just makes absolutely no sense at all. Now, the United States' response to this, you probably have heard this before, you should never let a good crisis go to waste. Well, here's what I'm talking about. The uptake for the flu vaccine's been declining for years, and I looked on the CDC site, and it says that less than half of all Americans are getting flu shots now. And this is in spite of it's a really aggressive campaign. I mean, you cannot walk into a Walmart or a grocery store in the fall without being really chased around by aggressive people who enthusiastically sell the vaccine to everybody who walks by, and this just isn't seeming to make a difference. People won't get the shot. Employees are starting to win lawsuits against employers for vaccine mandates. Another court case got decided earlier this week. A bill to eliminate vaccine exemptions for children in New Jersey failed to pass out of committee due to public protest. This was in spite of the fact, by the way, that the Democrats control both houses of the legislature in New Jersey. They really did have the numbers of people to get it done, but at least one legislator that I know about voted against his own bill because the public protest was just huge. So power to the people, but this is not good news if you're a drug company or a nanny-state politician. Numerous lawsuits are pending in New York since the state assembly passed a law eliminating all vaccine exemptions. And recently, and I thought this was curious, the Democrats introduced a bill to restore some of the exemptions due to pressure from constituents. And then in spite of Adam Schiff's ridiculous attempts at censorship, people are still watching the forbidden documentaries and learning about vaccine injuries online. And this is one of the reasons why the public is becoming more and more difficult to control. So there's nothing better than a crisis, manufactured if necessary, to reignite interest in vaccine mandates and new vaccines and even the existing flu vaccine. In fact, I've seen some health authorities on television who have recommended that people get the flu vaccine even if it's not for coronavirus specifically because, quote unquote, it's better than nothing. The drug companies are working diligently to develop a vaccine for coronavirus, even though the number of cases at the epicenter, China, is dropping and the threat seems to be going away in certain parts of the world. By the way, this isn't the first time this has been done. I wrote about this and later was proven right with the swine flu thing. And here's what happened. This was about 10 years ago, and supposedly we were going to have a swine flu epidemic here in the United States. And at a certain point in time, there were so many sick people that the World Health Organization and the Centers for Disease Control instructed doctors not to even test when people came into the emergency room or into a doctor's office. No time for that. Assume that they have the flu and treat them as if they have the flu. Well, what ended up happening is that later CBS News did an investigation and through the Freedom of Information Act was able to obtain the state records before and after the whole epidemic was over. And by the way, there was no epidemic. And so rather than just say, listen, we were wrong about this, everybody can settle down, they told people to stop testing so that they could say, oh my gosh, thousands of people are showing up in doctors' offices. And I remember there were lines outside of buildings giving vaccines that winter. They really did scare people into getting the vaccine. So the World Health Organization ended up admitting that that happened. CBS reported that it happened. There were lawsuits filed in the United Kingdom, people who were injured by the stupid vaccine that they didn't need to get. And it was just an entirely manufactured thing. So lest you think I'm crazy, this has been done before. I predicted it then, and I'm predicting it now. The most unfortunate part about this whole thing, as far as I'm concerned, is that instead of laughing about it, people are actually taking it seriously, which goes to the real underlying problem that we have in solving these kinds of problems in the United States. Most of the media doesn't investigate anything. They just report what they're told by the swamp creatures that inhabit Washington, D.C., politicians and the drug companies in particular, because they sure do spend a lot of advertising dollars in the media. The uneducated populace, generations of people who've received educations focused on self-esteem and other nonsense instead of critical thinking, believe what the swamp creatures and the media report. And then those of us who speak out hope that we will be heard and that Adam Schiff doesn't decide to censor all of this as part of his campaign to control everything, including what we're allowed to stream on our phones and tablets. I mean, I get infuriated every time I think about that. The solution to what I'm talking about isn't to shut people up. It's to start listening, because there are an awful lot of intelligent, educated, rational people who are starting to ask questions about this that are legitimate. I'm posing some things that I think we should be looking into here. Well, the bottom line, that's what I think is going on with the coronavirus. We'll certainly have an opportunity to find out as it all plays out. And I want to remind you, it's an election year, and don't let this manufactured hoax, I think it is, crock, dissuade you from what I think our jobs should be this year, which is to get rid of the politicians who are part of this nonsense and who permit this kind of thing to go on. So I hope that that clarifies it. I'd love to be proven wrong. And I have to say this, I'm going to finish with this. Every Tuesday and Thursday, I put out a video where something disastrous is going on in medicine. Once in a while, I'm happy to report something good that's going on in medicine, but most of the time it's what's wrong. I would love for all of this to go away. I would be happy to find something else to do. It does not give me any great pleasure to tell you that the government is corrupt and that there are all these conflicts of interest and that people have nefarious intentions and don't care about, they have a callous disregard for human health and the lives of children. I don't like telling you that. I don't like that that's going on. But it is going on. And I'm hoping that they say that the best disinfectant is sunshine. And I hope that if enough of us talk about this on an ongoing basis, we can actually, at some point in time, say, isn't it good that we finally made that all go away? Well, as usual, if you're not a subscriber, hit the subscribe button, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it. I'll be back to you on Thursday with more news.